All right, what's the other distraction? Tucker. Here with his double butt crack forehead look that he's famous for, almost as famous as his goofy Catholic schoolgirl laugh. Tucker, World War is close. I guess we're not even numbering them at this point.
Most Americans probably weren't aware that we are on the verge of a massive regional war in the Middle.
Really? We're not, because I think most of us are aware he sent an armada to surround Iran. And of course, they're buddies with Russia, and so are you. So you went there and you lobbied on behalf of the Ayatollah, sure. Not because you give a shit about this, a war breaking out, but because it's a war breaking out around one of your buddies.
East, if not a third world war. We are the largest movement.
Well, we would have been if Harris was in there or Clinton. I mean, it's the deep states, man. Like, Trump doesn't want to do it, obviously. He's just being forced to do it by the Pentaverate
Of American military hardware is, since 2003, the Iraq invasion, is now in or steaming toward the Persian Gulf off Iran.
Maybe it's a double bluff. Maybe he's going to attack Iraq again. Maybe he's going to take Afghanistan. He never wanted to leave in the first place. Maybe they're there so they can launch a new attack on the Taliban and we can take back Bagram, which he wants to do. You think he'll do that before or after we attack Iran?
Preparatory to what could be the aforementioned war.
Yes, you did mention it afore.
Now, most people, once again, probably didn't know this. Those who...
Yes, most of your viewers are indeed stupid.
Did know it, weren't for it. The recent polls on this question, are you for a war with Iran?
Yeah, as a non-qualifier, I'm sure it has its issues. I think a lot of people would go, I'm against it. Is there a reason to have one? If they don't know, they're probably going to go, I'm against a rando war. Sure. Also, they do have a functional military, or they did. But then that's what they said about Russia, so it's hard to know.
1 in 5 Americans support it. The rest are probably asking, war with Iran? Why would we have a war with Iran?
Yeah, the rest, and he's got, obviously he has the his thumb on the pulse of America, I guess somewhere else.
I like wood, deeper and longer.
Mm-hmm. They said no idea. The president did address it last night in his State of the Union and at a press conference. And he said in public what he basically says in private, Trump being one of those rare public figures who's pretty much the same.
Pretty much. Certainly not around the Epstein files, but sure, pretty much.
Behind closed doors as he is on stage. He says pretty much the same stuff. He's a little funnier in private, but basically he's not a different guy.
And by the way, what he means by funnier is more racist, bigoted, sexist, and derogatory, which Tucker finds funny.
Same guy. And he's been saying the same thing about Iran for a long time. Really, 2 things. 1, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He says it again and again. He really means it. That's not a talking point. It's completely sincere.
Well, the sincerity would have to be judged on why he says that and on whose behalf. And under Tucker's opinion, he says that and believes it is a real thing because Netanyahu told him.
And 2, I would prefer a negotiated settlement. I would prefer peace rather than war. And that's...
Which is what he said repeatedly before attacking countries.
Obviously true. So
No, it's not. No, it isn't. Sometimes it's a head fake. The last time he did this, he was like, we'll let you know in a couple days, and then he attacked right after.
Bottom line, where we are right now at the end of February 2026 on this looming Iran war, seems likely. Have all those aircraft carriers in the Persian Gulf, planes ready, missiles ready, but it's not certain because the president hasn't decided to do it. And you may...
Well, that's not... Also, you don't know if he's made the decision or not. You're taking him at his word because you're an idiot.
I get that impression either from watching the news. There is this sense that it's inevitable. And that's kind of a psyop, actually.
No, it's kind of not. People are expecting him. You don't move all that shit there just as a bluff. It's a tremendous waste of resources. And more than likely, people think it's inevitable, not because they want it to be inevitable, and it's a psyop. They're trying to convince the American people, well, we just got to do it. It's yellow cake all over again. As a matter of fact, most people are seeing this through the lens of the post 9/11 war doctrine, where everybody's like, "Oh shit, here we go again." That's why the 4, in 5 are against it.
Designed to make you think there's nothing you can do about it. No,
There isn't.
Trump has not decided to do this. Again,
How do you know?
seems likely. All the momentum is in that direction.
So that's what the reports are saying in the news, and that's where the concern is. Yours as well.
But the president's the sole decider on this question. He's
a decider. All right.
commander-in-chief, and he's showing no.
Yeah, except he's not supposed to declare war on a country without Congress. That's because this isn't just a retaliatory thing. They didn't attack us, and and that's why these moved in. We moved these things in after he had already bombed their nuclear program into obliteration, and now he's got to re-obliterate it.
Obvious signs of enthusiasm. And why would he? There are a lot of reasons not to do this. The first being the one just mentioned, which is most Americans don't want it.
Yeah, that's true of a lot of things, including his stupid fucking tariffs.
And though it's not a direct democracy, it's a form of democracy, and you probably shouldn't commit history-changing acts without the support of your people. And
why? He does it all the time.
Trump feels that way.
No, he doesn't.
This is
Where the fuck did you get that idea?
someone who pays very close attention to, say, TV ratings. Why is that?
Right, but that's not him being reflective of democracy. He's picking certain channels, and if certain people cheerlead him enough, he'll just assume the other polls are fucking fake. He said so.
It's because he worked in TV, but because he thinks they're a pretty good measure
He did not work in TV. He was on TV. He did no work.
of what people are interested in. He cares about what people think, and he's willing to listen to almost anybody.
Oh, great. That makes me feel much better about this decision.
So that's a good reason not to do it. The public's not behind you. Maybe you've got great reasons to do it that they don't know about yet, but we haven't heard those, and the president hasn't really explained them other than to say Iran is bad. Yes, that's been the official U.S. position since 1979. Iran.
Right, but we haven't sent an armada there preemptively, even though we've said this and dealt with them as such through a lot of different political and economic windows and even through proxies. But that's what makes this different. It's not like, well, Trump, just like, when Bush or Obama said Iran's a problem, Trump's just saying Iran's a problem, but sending 60% of our naval assets there. It's the same thing.
Can have nukes. That's always been the president's position. And we would like some kind of settlement.
Well, I was under the impression that we had knocked out their ability to do it, period, last year. Obliterated was the word.
The reason he's not eager to start this war
citation needed.
Is because he, in general, isn't eager to start wars.
Where do you get that from?
Hasn't been, anyway. But because this would...
Why? Because one hasn't started yet? It's only been a year. And we've already bombed Syria and Yemen and a bunch of other places at the same time. And we bombed Iran once already. What do you mean he's not? Well, you could argue that started this war. He just wants them to surrender. He thinks the initial bombing would cow them into surrender. And if it doesn't, then he's going to do a full-scale war. That seems to be the strategy here. That's what all that peace... You think they changed the name to Department of War because Dodd sounds weak and Dow sounds heavier?
Be a particularly
Good God.
tough war.
Hold on.
This is
Whoops.
the largest buildup since the Iraq War, but Iran is not Iraq. It's much, much, much bigger and much more technologically advanced. The population of Iran is about 92 million. In 2003, almost exactly.
Also, what difference does that make? I mean, honest to God, like the kind of warfare he's talking about, like Trump's not talking about boots on the ground. He just means to decimate the place from the air. Why do you think he talks up the B-52s? You think we're going to even need soldiers in this war? With an armada that fucking size? Are you crazy?
Exactly 23 years ago, when we rolled into Baghdad, the population of Iraq was 25 million.
Yes, and we rolled in there. That's the other lesson learned from these assholes is that they're just going to strafe bomb the fucking place.
So Iran is more than 3 times bigger. The landmass of Iran is multiple, 6 times bigger.
Yes, but it's also more tribally divided, same as Iraq was.
It's huge. It's a huge, pretty advanced country compared to Iraq. So that's a
Pretty advanced.
problem right there. This is a serious thing to start a war with a real country.
Agreed.
Are we in a position to do that? Well, there's some debate about that. The U.S. military
Yeah, we've never had debate about whether to attack or not attack a country before. Every other president's just done it.
performs in a remarkable way under certain circumstances. But is the U.S. military right now ready for a prolonged conflict with a big country? No, it turns.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem is what's the level of obliteration necessary in this situation? Believe me, the U.S. Navy alone could take out every military strike, every military site in Iran 6 times over. We're not going to get into Russia, Ukraine. I mean, it's so stupid. The concern isn't that we're not ready. The concern is that we could do it pretty easily. The point is, it's not could, it's should.
These are facts taken from open source material that had been published. They're on the internet. You can look it up. None of this is classified. This is all out there. But current estimates suggest that the United States is so low on some munitions, partly because we've used them in the defense of Israel already in the last 12 months.
You do realize that Israel would also join in on this. There's just no fucking way they wouldn't. That's the plan. And that's probably why he hates the idea, not because it's a bad idea, but because of who would be our partner in it.
But whatever the cause, the United States is so low on certain kinds of munitions that were we to have even
By the way, this asshole also thinks Russia is winning in Ukraine.
a brief but intense engagement with Iran,
And it's a better country than America. Also, Russia is a much better country than America. Everything is awesome, and the people live at a higher level than any American could ever aspire to. Very clean, mostly devoid of gays, I think is what he means, but
our military would not be ready for like 10 years to fight a real war against, a peer or near peer adversary.
right, like China or what everybody thought Russia was. That ain't Iran. Iran's got a decent-sized force, but they've spent a lot of their money through proxies, and those proxies have largely been hit pretty hard. And again, it wouldn't just be us. It would be us and the Israelis together. So, believe me, we're not going to run out of bullets. And as a matter of fact, Donald Trump would welcome the economic push, effectively the war-footing addition to the American economy that will help him bail himself out of some of the shit, the holes he's dug with his tariffs. By the way, this is like war with Iran is a stupid idea, and Donald Trump is picking a fight, that need not be picked, especially if one is to be believed that he even set back their nuclear aspirations a few years, much less quote unquote obliterated them.
So out the window would go any hope of defending Taiwan. Whether or not it's a good idea is kind of,
We don't have to defend Taiwan. The Chinese will lose 1 million people on the attack on Taiwan. Like they've got sea drones for Taiwan. They've got air drones for Taiwan. It's just stupid. This is not like us protecting Taiwan from China, or like China wants us to get into a war with Iran so we run out of shit to fire at China when they attack. Good God.
up to you to decide. But that would not even be on the table because we wouldn't be able to. We would be much weakened by this because we don't have the stockpiles and we don't have the necessary industrial capacity to replace them quickly. So we are not in a position to have a lengthy engagement and ever.
Right. He doesn't plan a lengthy engagement. That's why he's big on the B2s. He's expecting shock and awe and no boots on the ground. There also is a bigger tide of citizenry in Iran that would take over the leadership in a way that didn't exist in Iraq or even in Afghanistan. They are also more, the public is more advanced there in that regard as well. It's a stupid plan, but it's not the same thing. And these false equivalencies are just him protecting Russia's buddy.
One at the Pentagon who's gaming this out understands that. And again, this
They game out everything. It's their job.
has been reported publicly, though not necessarily in the New York Times or the Washington Post, at least not on the front page, but it's widely known. So it'd be a tough war. We're not in a great place to fight it right now. And the potential downsides are absolutely real. Lots of things could happen.
Wow, breaking news. Thank God we come to Tucker Carlson for this incredible breakdown of information we all already have. I guess simple. Again, this is another one of those videos he does when he gets talking points directly from Russia. That's what this is. And sometimes, I've said that there's like some good ideas that have bad shepherds. This is another one of those. This is where, like, generalized agreement. This is why 4 out of 5 Americans are against this idea. So it's not news. It's just populist claptrap. Just jump on the fucking bandwagon, but join it because you are being funded by people who are buddies of this particular group. You notice he wouldn't give a rat fuck if we bombed one side or the other in Sudan. He wouldn't care. I mean, maybe he would to the extent of like, why are we wasting bullets protecting any black people at all?
There are tens of thousands of Americans.
I mean, the biggest reason he hates Bill Gates is not because of his proximity to Epstein, but because of he was fighting malaria in Africa, and to Tucker, that's like natural selection.
In the region, of course, in uniform and out, they could be hurt or killed. There's Israel, our ally, which is probably a little more vulnerable than we pretend it is to conventional
Based on what?
Attacks from ballistic missiles.
Which would be busy, I guess, firing at our ships.
Math on how many missiles Iran is believed to have versus how many anti-ballistic missiles Israel has, or we have to defend Israel. They could be in trouble. And then there's a question of...
Yeah, so we understand the concept that war is dangerous, I think is the point. Move on. Get on with it.
What happens to Iran? Like, does it fall apart?
Probably.
Does it disintegrate as a country?
No, it's got a populace that actually wants it to exist as a country. There's an actual genetic component of Iranians that are natural to the area, so they would like the country. They just were colonized by Islam, and that's the way they viewed it for a long time.
To be clear, as of tonight, there is no Israeli plan for what comes the day after we depose the Ayatollah.
How do you know? I mean, you're friends with Vladimir Putin. Why the fuck would they tell you? Maybe they have 5 plans, and they the fuck is this?
Knock out the leadership of the country. What happens then?
They bring in exiled leadership and go to the UN and try to help with a reconciliation thing to get a new government in place the same way shit happened in Syria, maybe? Obviously.
You're going to put in the former king's son or something?
Yeah, or something like that.
No one believes that's real. Will the country hang together with Pahlavi on the throne? Come on.
Sorry, so these people need to be ruled over by a dictator to exist as a country because that's just in their genes, I guess?
No one is thinking this through because the people pushing this clearly don't care what...
Oh, I see. The people pushing this. I think he means Mark Levin is who he's talking about. And if Trump does it, it's not because Trump wants it. It's because Mark Levin pushed him into it.
Happens.
And Lindsey Graham.
After. The point is to take out Iran as a coherent country, not to protect Israel, but...
Well, wouldn't that do it? I mean, if you take it out as a coherent country under the Ayatollah... So mission accomplished. You're saying mission... Jesus
in order
Christ.
to sweep Iran aside as a regional rival.
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Once Iran is gone, there's no question as to who controls the Middle East. It, of course, would be the only nuclear-armed power in the Middle East, Israel.
Well, it would also be Saudi Arabia because their mortal enemy would be gone, and it would benefit the Saudis tremendously, and the Qataris, who you famously have a relationship with, and the UAE, and I mean that is the current. It's not just Israel. There's a Sunni Shia break in this that has been an aspect of this forever. The Saudis would really love for Iran to be run by different people. because they are their primary rival. As much as they might say it's Israel, it really is Iran. There are sections of Saudi Arabia that have like people that are in alignment on the border of the ocean there, or the sea there rather, that are in Saudi Arabia that are aligned with the Iranians, and then on the Iran side there are people on that coast that are aligned with the Saudis. It's been going on for a long time.
Period. That's the reason. The problem is if the
Yeah, the problem.
country were to disintegrate, the downstream effects would be profound for everybody else.
Like what?
You would likely have refugee crises. Where would they go? Well, Europe. They haven't enough refugees. They might
Why would the Iranian refugees go there if their country collapsed, when it wouldn't be a bunch of Iranians would go back because of the reason they left?
go right across the water to Qatar
Hold on.
or UAE. Oh, that could be a huge, huge problem.
For why? Because you just bought property there?
So why would they push for this? Well, you have to think that the people pushing for this are not stupid. They've thought through the consequences. Let's say the United States attacks Iran.
Okay. The United States attacked everybody.
Maybe Iran just says, you're absolutely right. We're evil. We're rolling over. Everybody in charge is going to retire, commit ritual suicide. We're going to turn it over to some Western Democrat who brings in pro-choice politics and gay marriage, and we're cool. We're going to join NATO at that point. That's great.
What a terrifying notion. You mean Iran would go back to before it was colonized by the Ayatollah's people?
But what if
Notice, by the way, the nightmare scenario is that gays could live safely there.
Iran decides
Might be the other reason why he hates Israel.
it's better to die on your feet than on your knees, and just unleashes its conventional arsenal against American assets in the region, against Israel, and critically, against energy infrastructure in the Gulf? What would happen then?
They would be completely wiped out, and then there would be a big, expensive rebuild, and a lot of our bases would be evacuated during the attacks if we didn't have the ability to respond to what the fuck you think? Exactly that.
Well, you would see a global depression if they did that, if they were successful in doing
Why?
that.
Why? Why would there be a global depression without Iran? I see. Sorry, because it would lead to the continued collapse of the Russian economy. Right.
If the extraction facilities and refineries and petrochemical plants in the Gulf were disabled,
Why would those be the primary targets and not the civilian areas and the military bases? They're just going to. You think they've got enough munitions in Iran to just hit everything in the region? They're just going to be like the end of war games. They're just going to dump everything.
how expensive would oil be per barrel? How much would gasoline cost? What would steel go for? What would
Well, I don't know. I think there are a lot of people in the oil, steel, and gas industries that I guess are now rooting for it. Maybe they're the ones behind it
happen to
because oil prices are going down. The only reason they've gone up is because of a threat on Iran.
liquefied natural gas, which goes to both Europe and China? What would happen to Europe?
They would continue to get the vast majority of their stuff from Norway and the United States, like they did when they broke off with Russia.
If you just disrupted the flow of LNG from the Gulf to Europe? What would happen if you close the Straits of Hormuz, the choke point at the end of the Persian Gulf? Whew. I mean, wouldn't destroy the world forever, probably,
Probably.
but it would tank the economy in the meantime,
And that's never happened before.
for sure.
It's almost like Trump's buddies would want to buy the dip.
And who would
Speaking of dip,
suffer most? Well, let's see. The Gulf states, Europe, and the United States. It's kind of weird.
well, I think the Iranians might suffer a little. I'm just going to say if the Iranians were attacked and their only response was total annihilation of any target within range, the response to them would be pretty bad. I'm fairly certain the populace of Iran would get hit fairly hard in this equation, don't you think?
That anybody, especially an ally, would push for a conflict that's almost guaranteed to hurt its so-called allies. Why would you do that?
I think because the theory that they're pushing is that if they don't do it, it will eventually lead to that, and it will be done in such a way that it is even, an order of magnitude of violence and death, them being a nuclear power. That's the argument. Than if you hit them now. It's stupid, but that's the reasoning.
You can tell me you love me, but if you're encouraging me to commit suicide, you're probably lying.
It's a labored analogy. I know why he makes it, because, if you want to take something that's gray and you're not intellectually capable enough to process all the working parts, it's better to just devolve it into a stupid binary.
It's possible that we should judge people's intentions by the effects of what they do.
Oh, you mean so Trump saying tariff was his favorite words, but it actually fucks up the economy and ruins, you got more bankruptcies in small and medium-sized businesses directly related to the tariffs, whereas giant corporations can ride it out and benefit from having their competitors effectively swallowed up by the tariffs. And it effectively could be that ultimately tariffs, the whole point of it is as a protection racket for monopolies. That ultimately that may even be the primary reason Trump wants to do this tariff thing, that on behalf of giant corporations, you wipe out all the small businesses and all the middlemen that could be competitors, so that there's no one left standing that can compete with them, and because they can absorb the tariffs in a way that the other ones can't. You mean like that? So if you look at what's actually occurred, no matter what they said they wanted to have happen, if the results are different than what they stated in the first place, they're fucking assholes. I would look forward to you looking at every other aspect. It's almost like the release of the Epstein files, for example.
Not by their own description of their motive. America's
All right, I don't even know what the fuck. Is that? I mean, I don't need to watch any more of this, certainly. But does he just end it with an ad like this? Hold on. Yep. Yeah. Just brought to you by Good Ranchers. We're about to die. Everyone's going to die. And someone stupid is making a decision that Trump is just going to have to follow. And if he does it, we got to judge him based on what he does, not what his reasoning is. But not him, obviously, but the people who gave him the reasoning. So if Trump attacks Iran, it's going to be, we can blame Mark Levin and whatever placeholder Jew that Tucker Carlson doesn't like. In the meantime, because Israel will have almost no choice but to back us in this situation, whether they want to under Netanyahu or everybody else in their parliament doesn't want to, it won't matter, because once it's game on, fuck, everybody's got to jump in there. Brought to you by Good Rancher. The reason I wanted to show you that is because there has been this back and forth about this, and Lana Douche is drawing attention to it. This is partly apparently Tucker Carlson showed up at the White House, insisted no pictures of him being there be taken or whatever, or Trump did. It's hard to say. Sorry, wait 1 second. I apologize. I usually don't have to do it for the picture. It's usually only for video, but god damn, this is rough. That is one of the worst nunts. It's almost like Tucker Carlson's thumb is pointing right into it. I apologize. Just as a nut warning for everybody, prepare yourselves. This is Lana Douche, if you don't remember. She used to be the spokesperson for the NRA, and now she blathers like a real housewife of Mar-a-Lago. Oh, she's
about State of the Union, getting everything kind of set up for that. In addition to all of this, we were talking about State of the Union, getting everything kind of set up for that.
Yeah, it's so exciting. You're doing such a great job. It's wonderful. I don't even know why I'm even here.
Been seeing, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, the whole
We totally did. I mean, I didn't see it because why the fuck would I?
stuff, the whole thing with Tucker Carlson.
She looks like a tree frog. Come on, guys. Chat room, easy. Palate cleanser. Roseanne or Kat? I think the Roseanne thing. We got a Roseanne one if you want to see that.
And the disastrous interview that he did with Mike Huckabee.
And by the way, who's it a disaster for? Both?
I really
for Huckabee. Huckabee's a fucking lunatic. Huckabee thinks that Israel has a right to all the countries around it. Fuck Jordan or Transjordan. That's gone, right?
I do think that that's one of the reasons that he pulled the stunt that he did at that airport, because he knew that, this was going to be, it was going to be a poo show, right? It was going to be bad. So now I've seen people float this headlines like this, quote, Trump team on damage control after Huckabee comments on Israel.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be, because they're fucking insane. I'll show you those in a moment.
And it's a Politico piece that's written by someone who's known, a byline that's known for just reprinting Oppo. I mean, if you work at...
I mean, it's true, but, because they wrote it, I'm going to cast aspersions on the person that wrote it, because, I agree with it, but I can't be seen agreeing with it. So...
media at all. You get to know the bylines that do and the bylines that don't. So they're trying to make it like it's Mike Huckabee's problem.
It is Mike Huckabee's problem.
Imagine that this is coming. Look, I got questions.
I mean, it's all their problem. I got to say, I don't mind. It's Republicans eating each other's asses right now, and I'm for it. But Jesus.
And I'm going to tell you guys, a lot of this is about shuffling the deck and getting ready for post-Trump.
Ooh, shit. Sorry, at what stage of the shuffle are we at? Are we going to be dealing by June?
Tucker Carlson's son, Buckley, is like a deputy press guy within J.D. Vance's campaign. J.D. Vance was heavily promoted by Tucker and Peter Thiel. No matter what, and I know a lot of people don't like Mitch McConnell. God knows that I have my complaints with him over the past, 10 plus years I've been on air. But J.D. Vance wouldn't even be in the Senate had Mitch McConnell not come in to the tune of like $32 million and bailed him out, because he was not leading his Ohio Senate race. And even after that amount of money, he only won by...
Are you enjoying this as much as I am? This is, by the way, just to catch you up, this is Lana Douche explaining why J.D. Vance is a fucking loser and why he will be a loser in 2028, and that people are like building a narrative, or at least trying to build up J.D. Vance so that he doesn't just egg the entire fucking thing after, by the way, they lose the midterms and possibly the House and the Senate.
Barely a percentage point. It was that incredibly close. But there is an effort to try to shuffle the deck to position Vance after Trump. And I think this is all part of it, personally.
First of all, that's fairly normal in politics. What makes this special is they don't think after Trump means the end of the term. They think it means like this fucking year.
These are people they're setting the ground.
By the way, her lips are not AI. That is just filler gone mad. Good Lord. Maybe she just has a strawberry allergy.
Seeding the ground, I think, to push out people like Rubio. We're going to do a deep dive on that later, at some point.
Please do.
In the program, not...
Yes, I'm all for entire videos devoted to infighting.
Necessarily right now. But these are the same people that are floating these kinds of narratives. Oh, Trump team's on damage control. There's no damage control. And any Arab nation that would have called and expressed discontent, I would have told to go pound all the sand in the Sahara. No.
Oh, look.
They're having a
Except Trump just signed a deal with those countries for golf courses, and Tucker Carlson just bought property in one of them. So no, it's not. You're not going to tell them to go pound sand. They're your actual friends.
Conversation about certain issues, and we have our ambassador in Israel who is correcting the false narratives being promoted by a Qatari propagandist.
That would be Tucker Carlson, I guess.
And we talked, it's amazing to me, I'm going to be real snotty for a second.
Well, and by second she means until the show is canceled.
Number of drive-bys who take issue with my critique. I want all of the drive-bys with their giant fat backsides to have 1 million seats, because unlike them, I actually know the people that are involved in this, and I have...
Okay, so shut up. You know this whole thing about America and you can have an opinion on stuff? Well, fuck that.
Known them for over a decade. So if anybody is going to be positioned to know...
You've known the Qataris for over a decade? What do you mean?
More about the issue. Between me and the drive-bys, it's me. So
damn, that's right. I don't need you. This is basically her version of Trump after the Epstein memo from Pam Bondi telling his own supporters to go fuck off.
Have 1 million seats to all those drive-bys out there, and happy to literally choke you to death with receipts. You just...
Dear God.
Say the word.
Literally. Seems a bit violent.
Your Huckleberry. Now, of course, rhetorically speaking. Now, the whole thing with this is this narrative that's being floated is designed to take some of the heat off Tucker and try to refocus it and put it on Huckabee. And Huckabee, He did.
Sorry, so the White House, the stories about Huckabee having to do damage control is actually to protect Tucker. So Politico is trying to do Tucker a solid.
He was very eloquent, and I thought he dismantled all of this. So now they're trying to
Yeah, you're alone in that amongst maggots. I'm just
hurt
saying.
him with the narrative. They're trying
Holy
to promote
shit.
these narratives like, there are the Trump administration's on damage control because of Huckabee. But it wasn't Huckabee that was called into the White House and told to walk this stuff back. It was Tucker.
See, that's not all right. So her inside thing is apparently that Tucker Carlson was called to the desk of Trump. Everybody else is saying Tucker wanted a meeting and wanted to meet with Trump, and Trump said yes because he sucks up to people he thinks are famous.
So you have two camps within the administration right now
Yes, we have probably 7 actually.
that are leaking. You have the camp that's trying to push this narrative about Trump and Huckabee. He's upset with Huckabee, and Huckabee's, set off an international.
Okay, so it's true. All right, so remember, because you can't leak a lie, right? We know that it's a Sparksism. It stood up the test. It stood the test of time. Yeah, you can't leak a lie. You can lie, which is just a lie. But if you tell something and it's a leak, that means it's true. Okay, so he is pissed. Okay, we've established that. What's the other leak?
Incident. And then there's the camp that's actually saying, no, this is what's going on. Tucker had to go to the White House, and Trump was telling him to knock it off and was telling him to stop bashing Israel and stop talking about stuff he has no concept of. And that includes anything about the Christian faith.
So that would be the lying part. Okay.
So one of the headlines, Trump has had
Jesus.
enough of Tucker Carlson. After months of warnings from inside and outside the White House, Trump is asking for Carlson to cut his Israel bashing. There are 2 camps right now in the Trump administration. One of them is promoting Chrislam.
Oh yeah, that's the Christian Islam matrix against the Jews. That's a real talking point amongst maggots. Just in case you haven't seen this, Chrislam is a conspiracy theory amongst maggots that there are ideological Christians who believe they share more with Islam because in the Islamic faith, Jesus is at least acknowledged as a prophet and that kind of thing, if not the direct son of God, but we all are, that kind of shit, and is honored in Islam at least to some degree, whereas in Judaism, he's obviously a false, Messiah. So the frenemies, the enemy of my enemy is my frenemy.
Right? And the one is promoting Chrislam, and the other is just trying to be a normal God-fearing faction.
As hard as they can. It's very difficult because they're down the hall from Trump farting all the time.
That's what's happening within the Trump administration.
And you can't not take the Lord's name in vain when you walk past him and go, Jesus.
Right now. And they are all jockeying to get in position for when Trump leaves office.
What form do you think that leaving will take?
They're all jockeying for control of the party for when Trump is finished with his second and final term. That's what really a lot of this comes down to. And I do think that I think as part of the
Your lips to God's ears, lady.
Chrislam faction that's taking place, I do honestly think that that's a result of a lot of spending by countries like Qatar. And that's not projection and it's not hyperbole. There are receipts. They spend more than every other nation on earth lobbying. And
They call Tucker Carlson in that group.
in the United States, whether it's academic
Or in the other group, I guess. That's why that other group calls him Tucker Carlson. Okay.
whether it's in
I don't know what we need to name these factions. You got the Chrislam group and the bullshitters, the Vance, the eugenics tealites.
Hollywood. I mean, they're taking over the CCP and with the monetary amounts being spent on American colleges and universities and in Hollywood. I mean, if you thought Tencent buying up, gaming and film and all of that was bad, wait until you see the Qatari money that's coming in because it's almost 2-to-1. And this is all, and that's
It's almost because China's running out of money.
just the money that's public. That's just the stuff that we know about. We're not even getting into the weeds of the purchasing of influencers. So
Yeah, that's been going on for a long time. I mean, investment in Hollywood has been a way that a lot of countries have actually painted their countries as heroes or allies when they absolutely are not. I mean, I'm a big fan of the movie The Martian, but there's a reason why it's China that has a magic rocket that saves the day when it doesn't.
This is what all of this is about. It is a giant
I thought it was the hokey pokey.
psyop to see the United States for Chrislam. And you have a faction that's also in part using it to try to set themselves up to take over post-Trump. They don't believe in primaries. They don't even believe in elections. They just
And they all work in the White House.
believe in passing the baton and creating and fabricating some sort of makeshift quasi-hereditary, power transfer. That's all
Holy shit. She's talking about J.D. Vance, for the record.
this is. And it's pretty obvious who's who and who's on what.
I think you should name them, though. I think it would be good. So we're going with Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance and Tucker Carlson and who else? Who else is in this group? I'm fascinated.
Right? Some of this even bleeds over into the Charlie Kirk stuff
What? Oh, my God.
with Candace
Wait, you don't think that when Erica Kirk kept saying, God bless you to everyone, that she wasn't being sincere?
Owens. There's tentacles everywhere.
Wait, sorry. Which side?
Charlie Kirk stuff with Candace Owens. There's tentacles everywhere.
Which direction is she? Is Candace Owens Chris Lam? I think she probably is, right? She would be Chris. Yeah. So it'd be Candace Owens, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, Tucker Carlson against everybody else who's on the Epstein list. I don't know.
So this is a ridiculously
This is fucking awesome.
false narrative.
Also, yeah, she said hereditary. I think what she means is just kind of like president to vice president pass on doesn't sound. It sounds too normal, and it would be Don Jr. or Eric or even, God help us, Ivanka, if that was the case. But whatever.
that Huckabee did very well.
He's fabulous. Fabulous. You know what? Fuck it. Let's just, chat room, let's jump over and see just how amazingly well Mike Huckabee did. Now, I would like to say for the record, let's see if I can, which one? Yeah, here it is. This is a video from Tucker Carlson's interview with Mike Huckabee that he cut up. And the title of it is fucking magic. These people, I would like to remind you, are allegedly on the same side of the political spectrum. Yes, and also both people will support Donald Trump in whatever the fuck he does, whether it goes with their perceived opinion or not. Just letting you know. And the title of this is Huckabee tells Tucker he's unable to process any other nation's right to exist than Israel is what he means. Okay, so again, we're just I'm enjoying, watching the fight between the anaconda and the alligator from a safe distance, as it were. Both are concerned, and whoever wins is obviously who will be the person we have to deal with. But rather than having to fight both of them, which unified we'd be in big trouble, one will consume the other in this process. And let me give you an example of just how this conversation went.
Who have definite Jewish connections.
Oh, by the way, this gets really fucking awkward. Just letting you know. There's going to be some shit said that you're just going to go, oh, okay. You're going to put it that way.
Family relations, but now they're Christian. Some are not necessarily practicing Jews. They're not. They're more
Maybe they don't need to practice anymore. Maybe they've already gone pro.
secular Jews, as you've discussed, but they come back here.
Okay, I'm not against that. I'm just wondering, since you began this conversation by asking me, did I think they had a right to come here?
Yeah, that's
and
what
my question
Zionism is.
was, on what basis do they have the right?
Yeah.
And
And
you
I've tried
said
to-
because God granted it to them.
And I also said because that there should be a land where
Yes. So for the record, our ambassador from the United States doesn't default to, well, British protectorate, and they've been driven out by the other Arab nations, and then that British protectorate was turned over to the Israelis that were there because Israel is a place that we followed the name of, and so the people that were, the tribal Palestinians of Israel could go back home after this because, let's be honest, the creation of Israel after World War II was in its own way an act of anti-Semitism. It was like when a bar's closing, like you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And they're like, but I don't have a home to go to. And they're like, okay, yeah, you're right. Well, how about this? We'll create Israel so the Jews can go there and just stay until Jesus comes back and kicks the shit out of all of you, right? So yeah, professional Jews. That's right. I don't. According to him, there's practicing Jew. There's practicing and non-practicing Jews, and the non-practicing Jews are just amateurs, I guess. Kidding. It's like secular Jews. And wait till you hear how he describes it.
Jews can live in peace and safety.
And I asked you what a Jew was, and you couldn't answer it. You
Sorry. Okay. Again, this is. Do you think Tucker Carlson and Mike Huckabee thought they would be sitting across from each other having this conversation during Trump won?
It partly is religious, but doesn't have to be. It's partly genetic, but it doesn't have to be. And so that you can see why I'm confused.
I think I was very clear that being Jewish is an identification either through blood or through faith that you're Jewish. It may be that you're a blood Jew,
which is a really awkward way of putting it. What are you? I'm a blood Jew. Oh, that sounds terrifying and in its own way like a trope meant to accuse Jews of terrible things. A blood Jew. Jesus Christ.
but you don't necessarily practice Judaism, just like there are people who say they're Christian, but they don't do a thing to demonstrate what Christian
There are a lot of bad Christians.
Sure. I mean, there's two of them sitting right there in the room. Like, he's like, yeah, like me. He's literally like, okay, guilty as charged. Don't throw stones.
Including me some of the time, a lot of the time.
Most of the time.
But I don't have a right to real estate on the basis of my claim of Christianity.
You don't have a right to real estate if you're talking about a specific parcel. But if you're talking about a land, I think what we're talking about
real
is
estate. That's all
Yeah,
all I'm saying.
Also, by the way, land is fucking carrying a lot of weight here, like land in air quotes.
And there was a designation to the family of nations of the world that there would be a Jewish homeland. Let's get to that point, because I think you've taken us on several trails here, and I'm not sure we can follow them all. But is there a reason that the Jewish people that represent, and I want to get back to this because you didn't let me finish a while ago, they represent 0.2% of the world's population. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total. And 8 million
And boy, has everybody been fixated on getting them out of their countries and into another one.
of them live here. The rest live mostly in New York or South Florida and a few other places.
Okay.
Sorry. I got to tell you, okay, there's a tendency in watching a clip like this, and I understand it, and I hear you and see you, chat room, that to get caught up in the actual discussion that's going on between these two fuckheads. Don't. I want you to just watch the dynamic between two assholes effectively having a conversation about whether the Hulk could beat up Superman in a fair fight, and treating it like a meaningful discussion about modern politics.
So this is a small population of people. They have connection to this land, historically, biblically.
Do they?
Yeah. They do.
If Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense
ancestrally- but
how do we know
ancestrally-
that? Do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
He doesn't. So no one does. That's the point.
But
So
if
how do
there
we
is-
know that he
but
has any
if they
connection
are
to this land at
Jewish-
all?
Yeah, he could just be a Russian who just decided to leave, like a bunch of folks.
And if there has been a practice of Judaism and a connection to the language, the
he
Bible,
doesn't-
Or a not practice, what time is practice? I think we're late.
and
His ancestors didn't. He doesn't practice Judaism in any rigorous way. His ancestors didn't live here. They
In any rigorous way. Kind of like Tucker and Christianity.
didn't speak the language.
But Tucker will actually sell Christianity all fucking day on his little fucking, from his wooden podium that he has. Where is this? Hold on.
I like wood. Deeper and longer.
And there's no evidence they ever lived here. So on what basis does he have a right
very
to be
much
here?
speaks the language. He has fought for the land. His family has fought
I feel
for
like
the
you're
land.
dodging a
No, I'm not
very
dodging.
obvious question, which is where does this right come from? And the
I've-
reason
I've
it's meaningful
given you that
is
answer.
because there are a lot of people in the territory that Israel controls today, particularly.
I would like to say for the record, I'm not going to get caught up in this whatever because I'm just enjoying the fact that these two dipshits are fighting. But the idea that somebody would be like multiple generations removed from their homeland and be able to, their family would go back if they were driven out, especially by violence, seems to be something. It's not a hard idea to grasp. It seems like Huckabee is leaning that way with Netanyahu's family. It's a bad example because he's trying to vilify every Jew that's returned to the land based on the obvious one that everybody hates, which is, and with good reason, Netanyahu. But this is one of those situations where Tucker Carlson pretends to be confused by the topic instead of just admitting to his own bigotry and just calling it. And the idea is that nobody has the right. I don't believe in magic rocks. I don't think anybody has a material, spiritual, godly right to be in any particular area. You can establish sort of a legal right to it and defend that legal right through a constitution, borders, those kind of things or whatever. But the idea is like, this is magically my land is a fucking stupid argument because either the whole world is holy or it ain't. The idea that there are magic lands and other places just suck and have to live under the people who are from Magic Rocktown is really silly. But that's the argument worth having. Is that that concept is absurd, but he can't have that because this is really him just fighting on behalf of Russia's interest in the area.
The West Bank, who through genetic testing we can know their families have been here for thousands of years. We don't know whether they practiced Judaism, whether they were Samaritans,
or Philistines, because of the name Palestine came from the name Philistine because there was that's where the whole story about shibboleth comes from, is because certain people couldn't pronounce it the right way because they didn't have a fucking sh in their language, so they would say sibboleth, and that's how you knew they were the bad guys, and they didn't know the right code word and all that kind of shit for this area. Let me tell you, I think the argument about where tribes were during the fucking Bronze Age being germane to current borders is a little silly, and that ship has sailed. And I think it's about time we all become good neighbors, and then if you're going to dismantle the borders that we do have on Earth, it will have to be done through the shared humanity of everyone and not like, get the fuck out of here. I really have a right to this ground because my ancestors were here first. Ask the Romanians about that. You think the Romans were the first people there?
Don't know that. A lot of them we know have been Christians for 2,000 years. They have.
Well, I mean, obviously, that would be the from the start of Christianity. I think it didn't exist before that. Technically, every Jew that followed Christ after that would have been a Christian and no longer a Jew. So the big question was Christ the first Christian or the last Jew? I guess that's always it's a good Trivial Pursuit question. Not great on current international borders based on regional hegemony of different groups.
Less of a right to the land than someone whose ancestors, the only thing we know about them is they lived in Latvia or Poland. They're Eastern European. How does that?
Yeah, they didn't magically appear. You don't think Europeans magically appeared there, do you? They all kind of came up this way. I mean, he's getting dangerously close to like everybody's African, which is definitely not something that Tucker Carlson is ever going to cop to.
Work.
They're Jewish.
By what definition?
They're Jewish by their
But how do we know they have any connection
they're
to
Jewish
the
by
Jews
their
of the,
faith. They're
of the
Jewish
Bible?
by the connection to the language. Jewish by the connection to the Torah.
But how do we know that Bibi, specifically Bibi's ancestors, ever lived here? How do we know that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't? I mean,
Well, it's on the basis of the claim that they did that.
No, he's Jewish, so they've already made the point. This is so stupid. I get. How do you not get caught up in this dipshittery? It's obvious that he said there's Jews, but they're blood Jews, and then there are Jews by choice, but they're basically the same because they believe the same thing and they're part of the same tribe, and they're not that picky. Sammy Davis Jr. would have the right to go back to Israel by the standard that they're holding because Judaism is Judaism is Judaism. The problem that Tucker has is that he definitely does not want Sammy Davis Jr. in America, to have come to America, much less ever left Africa. So this is Tucker Carlson's push. I think it's hard to tell because it just seems like it's a pissing contest.
All kinds of things happen. People are displaced.
Yeah, that would be the point, that they were displaced and then generations later they went back, and it's hard to track their lineage because a lot of people, here's the funny thing, is that there are a lot of people who don't realize that they are Israeli Jews because they left and changed their name. I think it was like Louis C.K.'s family went to fucking Mexico and pretended to be Mexican because, Jews weren't welcome. Sammy Davis Jr. literally had this joke about about him getting on a bus and the guy saying, "You got to sit in the back because you're black," and he goes, "You don't understand, I'm Jewish," and the driver goes, "Oh, well, then you're not allowed on the bus at all." Like, that was the running gag at the time. So there are more Jews that don't know they're Jews from that area than there are Jews that think they are but aren't. It's so fucking weird.
Money flow. I mean, it's a big question. A lot hangs on this. It's not some theoretical thing like, oh, did my grandparents do this or do that? It's like, no, we have a right to be here because my ancestors were here. Okay, how do we know they were here?
I think he just made the point that Jews can be is a religion and a bloodline, and it's not like the people who are from the bloodline are the only Jews allowed back. This is so fucking weird. Let's be honest. This is just fun to watch. Again, these guys are on the same side, and this interview is incredibly divisive for maggots right now. It's spectacular.
I'm totally unable to process what you're trying to get at. It goes back, do Jewish people have any land on this planet that should be theirs to
I
give
feel
them?
that way about all peoples. I feel that way about Jewish peoples. I feel that way about...
Okay,
Yes, no one is more kumbaya than Tucker Carlson. By the way, this is born out of, and I'm not kidding, this is born out of Tucker Carlson's belief that Middle Eastern migrants and black people need to go back to Africa and the Middle East and fucking stay there. I feel that way about all people. It means I want everybody except white Europeans to stay out of everywhere else, Canada, the United States, etc., and that any native tribes, that's why they've got reservations. They can live on that land and they're perfectly happy to do it. We don't have to share that space with them at all. That's what the root of this is. So, his back and forth argument is sort of a global argument of forcing sort of a back to Africa thing from the United States.
then you don't mind them having...
Hold on.
Is there any country, let me ask you this bluntly, is there any country that European peoples have a right to exclusively?
I think they have attained their land through conquest. I mean, let's ask
Have
ourselves...
the Britons attained their land through conquest? No, they've always been there.
The Romans, the Greeks, we've had all...
Well, yeah, what would effectively be the British, which would be the Germanic and French tribes, came up and drove the Romans out, and they went back down where they came from, and that would be the exchange up there. And then, of course, those people got... my ancestors got sexually assaulted by my other ancestors, and poof, the British Isles.
Let's speak. Let's speak. Well, you could certainly say that here. The Romans controlled this, as you know, and they expelled all the Jews
anymore.
from Jerusalem. Amen. I don't want them to control it.
Hope not.
I'm anti-Roman. Okay, we're on the same page.
Okay.
But
No, you're not. Then why aren't you talking about why Romania should have to change its name and the people that were there that got wiped out should be able to come back to that land?
question is very simple. Is there any European peoples that possesses the same right to their land that the Jews, including people whose ancestors...
No, there are no Europeans in the Bible. We don't even exist, dummy. And by the way, to modern evangelical Christians, they're the new Jews. Like, if you trace like the evangelical belief about who the chosen people are, they would lean that to this. This is so fucking stupid, CSL. Like, drives me crazy. They believe that that the old tribes of Israel are the people who broke the covenant, and the new covenant with Christ is that we're the chosen land, and that America is actually the Israel of the Bible, the land that was going to be created for God to carry out what he wants on the fucking planet. They don't even think it's like, they think evangelical Christians, boil it down to the basis of the Hank Kunnemans and the fucking, Gene the Jesus Machine, all those dipshits over at Flashpoint. If you boil it down, they're just as much like we're the real Jews as the black Hebrew Israelites. It's fucking goofy.
Lived in Eastern Europe possess here. The Britons, we know, the British people, the Scandinavian people, the Irish people, their ancestors have been there for thousands of years. That's provable through genetic testing. Do they have a right?
Yeah, but there are also people in the British Isles that their ancestors haven't been there for thousands of years, but they're Irish because their ancestry is fucking French or German, and they came along 500 years ago. And they're just as fucking Irish as everybody else whose French and German relatives came there 1,000 years before. So fucking stupid.
To their land exclusively.
Good God.
Is anyone saying they don't?
Yes, of course. Yes. No one will say they will. And I'm asking you, do they have that right?
And I'm not sure what that question involves, because no one is trying to force them out of their land, of their home.
Oh, yeah, Huckabee, you don't understand. You're walking into the rake of the great replacement theory. Immigrants are moving up to Ireland and turning the place brown. And the Irish are a real genetic line, and they're being surreptitiously wiped out by Islamists who are coming up there to, that's where he's going.
But here,
Wait, hold on.
you have people.
Why won't you answer that question?
Because I just did.
Oh, so the Irish people have the same right to their land that the
I don't know
Jews
that they have
to.
a biblical connection.
Okay,
But I'm a Bible believer.
okay.
So that is.
But it's
important
also
to
a
me.
principle.
No, you're not. He's not a fucking Bible believer. You don't think the earth is fucking flat, dummy? Maybe he does. I don't know, he's fairly stupid. But you certainly don't believe that we live under a goddamn firmament. You don't think that the rockets that NASA sends off actually bounce off and fall into the ocean, and it's all big fucking plot by the devil worshippers to pretend we all live in space and God created everything else and that there might be life that's not mentioned in the Bible and blah, blah, blah. No, you're not. Good God.
And that is, and you've said it 15 times.
Sometimes people have land because they were able to attain it through war. They were able to obtain it when it was challenged.
I understand that. There's all kinds of consequences. But we can't say that about the Irish.
The world borders change all the time.
Not actually, the borders of the island of England have not changed. Nor.
Well, most islands' borders don't change. It's sort of an internal move. Yeah. I mean, pretty much shoreline tends to be a little more static.
But the government.
Transnistria becoming, being its own little.
Ireland. Those are just two examples. So you've got
They're not examples. You're being a silly
the
person.
indigenous people there. Do they have a moral right to that as their homeland?
And I think they would probably say, yes, we do, because we have ancient history
What do you
to it.
think?
I've never thought about whether
Now
they.
that I'm raising the question, and you've spent a lot of time thinking about the right of the Jewish people.
He's the ambassador to Israel. That's why he was put there. It's because he's a fucking true believer.
To their homeland, do the Irish have the same right to a homeland?
As long as they can defend it, and as long as they,
As long as they can defend it.
But Tucker, here's the point.
That's true of Israel, too.
Wait a
I'm
second.
telling you-
Yes.
Wait, hold on. Now you just flipped category. You're the minister here.
Yeah, and I'm telling
As
you,
long as they can defend it.
and
if they can't
you're not
defend it, they
allowing
lose
me
the
to
right.
tell you that.
Well, in theory, kind of, yeah. I mean, Tucker would be okay if the Russians took Ireland.
I think that what is very, very
It's Iceland. Who has more right to Iceland? The people or the ice? Which it doesn't have because it's actually green.
special here is that there is a biblical as well as an ethnic and a historical. So you can take any one, but if you add them all together, biblical, historical, and ethnic, you have a very strong case.
What about Celtic scrolls? I know you're a Bible believer, but I would like to say that I have a Celtic sword that's been in my family for a very long time with some etchings on it that tell a little bit of history. It's fairly awesome. I also have a kilt. I'm not wearing it right now. You don't know what I'm wearing. It's none of your goddamn business. Maybe I'm not wearing anything at all. Hi there.
The Jewish people are living in a land that is indigenous to them. that has been their historic homeland for 3,800 years.
You can repeat it as
And you can
as
also
often as
look in
you
the
want.
archaeology, the stones cry out.
Okay.
Have you been to the city of David, for example?
have. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So you
Oh yeah, it's great. It's awesome. The water slide is fucking awesome.
know then that
And I
when
love
you,
it.
it's a
And I love it. I love the city of David. Who's David again?
amazing place.
agree.
It may be the greatest archaeological discovery in all of history because
Simmer.
Great.
it's
It's great. I like it. It's great.
stunning. And they still continue to find things
They're digging in the wrong place. I am the monarch of the sea. All right.
that date the Jewish people to this land archaeologically for 3,800 years.
We can date the British people to their land much longer, much thousands of years longer. Stonehenge is 3,000 years older than any building built by the descendants.
Yeah, but that was the argument is that that was made by the Roman push up into that area, and then usurped by the Celts because they drove them back out because they weren't actually from there. They came up, killed some people who were basically in mud huts. The Romans came up there, started building some shit. They got driven out by the mud hut people who were like there first, effectively the natives of that land, and then they claimed sort of a mixture of the Celtic and Roman stuff that was like left behind. It became over thousands of years part of their natural culture. It was a mix. I don't know, why am I in this? Why am I even? How do I get dragged into this? All right.
Of Abram in this country. And so it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's right. I'm just wanting you to affirm that right, but it makes you uncomfortable and you won't. And I don't know why.
It doesn't. He's just trying to make a point that one is biblical and he's doing a biblical version of things. And that's the basis of his belief. Whereas he doesn't believe in the religious aspects of paganism, which, by the way, Tucker Carlson does not either, which would be the religious reason why they have a right to that land. In the same way that some native tribes in the United States, in territories inside the United States, believe they have a right to that land because of their religious beliefs, written or not.
Because I've never honestly sat down and asked myself, are the lines around the
It's an
United
island, so we know what the
Kingdom-
lines are.
I'm saying, but are those lines, are those rooted in something other than the historical connection? Well, great, then they should have it. But
And
that's
they have
a
a right
question.
to have it. But then you said if they can defend it, and if they can't defend it, they lose the right.
But I didn't say it was exclusive one or the other. I think you're really going off the trail.
I just want to know if these principles apply universally or if they only apply.
Okay, this is the question Tucker needs to know. As a Irish adjacent human being, apparently, are Jews more important than Irish people? That seems to be his stuck part. Okay, point is for the sake of moving on from this horse shit, is that this clip and the back and forth about it was the point of that whole kerfuffle that's happening online and created this thing that Lana Douche was talking about in general chat room. And I know I'm going long on this one, but it like this back and forth, I'm 100% for it because again, these assholes act like they're going to resolve any of it, and they ain't. And we'll end. Can I end on one? Yeah. Okay. So Mike Huckabee was on JTV after this. We obviously know how Tucker cut these things together, and they're like, look at I'm a big fan of JTV's thumbnails. Really well done. They got the kind of TikTok titling with the word strange being outlined. The really nice cartoon area. I think that I've seen that on Canva. It's adorable. And then apparently it points at something that Mike Huckabee was showing him, perhaps a map. We don't know. But Mike Huckabee breaks his silence after Tucker Carlson interview with ugly details. Ooh, ugly details. I hope they get to him early because I don't need to sit through all this.
So by now, many of you will have seen the great Tucker Huckabee clash. I did a video just earlier on why I
Fabulous.
think this is actually quite incredible that they're touching on something so central now about whether or not the Jews are God's chosen people and the land of Israel was divinely.
Okay, real quick. All due respect to every Jew on the planet, no group of human beings are God's chosen people. Whether you believe in God or not, as Albert Pike once said, everyone is entitled to their own unique mistake, and that anytime you try to shovel God through the corpus callosum of the human being, it will always come out with whatever their tribal inclinations are. Everybody thinks they're on the right side of whatever their deity is, if indeed they have one. Even if they come together and go, hey, we got this, like the Abrahamic traditions, which is basically this big we're all living through a big Jerry Springer religious fight between the Abrahamic, hereditary lines between Christianity, Judaism, and then later Islam. And these branches away from the Abrahamic faiths, they're all jockeying for effectively resource control over a very limited area. And then, of course, an expansionist view by the Romans, which is the sort of transmutation from Roman society into the Catholic society as a way of like, we could beat everybody up, or we could just do this through hearts and minds. And the Catholic Church was sort of born out of that idea. As a way of creating a governance cycle that can spread everywhere and can effectively cross existing borders without having a shot fired, is the concept. But they're all and on the way, all three of them effectively usurping or enveloping either pagan, native, Aztec, and Asian religious practices within them. You could argue that Catholicism took polytheism and turned it into the saints. You could all three of them born out of Zoroastrianism, which was born in Iran mainly, and was it was the first monotheistic religion. Even so much that it picked up in the middle of where like Judaism was born. There's a lot of they, and in the Ten Commandments it says, you shall have no other gods before me. It doesn't say I am the only God. It says I'm the most important one, and I'm jealous, and you better listen to me. And if you like those other gods, I will not favor you. It doesn't say anywhere at that point that all those gods are fake. It's very curious that way, because it was polytheistic at the time, and it was transferring to a monotheistic religion for tribal reasons over time. So no group of people are, quote, God's chosen people. I'm just saying that part is, and I think that's why Jews have carried an untoward burden, because of that statement and idea. On the one hand, it's helped them to elevate in the face of others, of Islamic expansion and Christic forces coming down from the north after the fact. But it's a double-edged sword. Saying you're the chosen people gives you a protected status, especially amongst American modern Christians in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it sounds really fucking egomaniacal, and that it carries the weight of that as well. So between those two things, that's where the sort of division about being pro, and anti-Semitic, I guess, comes from.
Ordained, given to them. That is biblical stuff, and the fact that that's coming into the mainstream discussion is remarkable. But I wanted to touch on something.
This is not a mainstream discussion, I would like to say for the record. Tucker Carlson and Mike Huckabee yammering at each other on Tucker's like little sideline blogosphere that he built with his own fucking Swanson and Fox money is absurd.
Which
the idea of Tucker Carlson as indie media or somehow that's now mainstream is bizarre.
The question of what's actually motivating Tucker, because Huckabee did an interview with News Nation on the show Batia, where she asked him straight up, "What do you think has led this shift in Tucker, where he seems to be going full throttle against the Jews, against Israel?" And I want you to show you what Huckabee's response is.
There's an irreconcilable difference between Christians and Jews when it comes to the final equation. And anybody who's focused on the final part of it is going to butt up against that. There is no kumbaya moment between Christians and Jews based on the Bible. One group is a group of heretics, according to the other, and the other group is the old way that refuses to join in with the truth. So like in the middle of it, Judeo-Christian works very well in the kind of, if you're using it as a holder for kind of like early tribal legal and spiritual guidance. But there is an end point. There is a point where they collide. And that's, Tucker Carlson, these assholes, they're fixated on this because it's the only time that matters to them.
Because he's,
the end.
Frankly, quite...
Because in the middle of it, they're absolutely fucking useless. Tucker Carlson in the middle of life, like where we all live, going to shows and concerts and going to the park with our families and living, he's completely useless in that. So I would argue is Mike Huckabee. So both of them have to fixate on this kind of end times prophecy, working out the final question of who deserves what, because the rest of the question, the actual living part, it's like anti-abortionists in a lot of ways. They're very pro birth. They're not pro life. Life is the thing that happens between your birth and your natural death, however that occurs. And that's a lot. That's very complicated. And raising the value of human life in that it requires a depth of thought they are incapable of processing. So they just want the baby born and they're pro-baby in that regard.
Bewildered by it all, he thinks there's quite a sharp and swift change. I want to show you what he says, and I want to give you some further thoughts on what I think's going on, and also some thoughts from Brandon Tatum, who I interviewed recently, who's an American Huckabee.
I used to admire him so much. He was very
Well, it's nice of you to admit you're stupid.
kind to me as a young reporter. He would have me on his show on Fox News, and I'm still grateful for that. But I have to tell you, in the intervening time, he hosted a man who said that Hitler was not the real villain of World War II on his podcast and agreed with him. He had a very cozy interview with Nick Fuentes. The majority of his episodes have been devoted.
Oh, by the way, pardon me, ma'am, I don't know you, so I can't tell what level of gullible you are. But I will say that Tucker Carlson was always this way. He was always like this. They just targeted it up for Fox News in the early days because there was an acceptable line, and that line has continued to be pushed forward, and as far as bigotry, through the expansion of MAGA. Now it's completely okay to be pro swastika or argue that we've misinterpreted American history X and who the bad guy is.
Trashing Israel for some reason, despite the fact that he says he's on the America First train. He said that he despises Christian Zionists. A question I get asked a lot, which I want to put to you, is what happened to Tucker Carlson?
He got fired. He was apparently fell in love with a trucker he was sexually assaulted by a demon.
I wish I knew. Like you say, I've known him for over 30 years. He worked in Little Rock, Arkansas when he first, was getting his career started.
No, he didn't. He's a fucking Nepo baby. He's never worked a day in his life.
That's when I first knew him. Then I worked with him at Fox for 6.5 years in New York. I don't
worked in air quotes.
Recognize the Tucker Carlson of today with the one that I've known then. And in our interview, I noticed how combative he was and contentious. Now, we had a cordial time. I don't hate Tucker. I like him. I don't have any animosity toward him.
Because you can't afford to, because you both share the same audience, and you're afraid if you go after him, he'll come after you because he has no limit anymore, because he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and he doesn't give a rat fuck about anybody that doesn't benefit him.
But I'm confused by him.
That's because you're stupid and you're incapable of processing reality.
And when we tried to converse, if I was trying to counter some of the things he was saying that are demonstrably untrue, like that Christians in Israel are treated poorly, I said, Tucker, I'm a Christian. I live in Israel. I've been coming to...
You're also the ambassador. You're not going to run into the run-of-the-mill Hasidic or Orthodox Jew who doesn't like Christians for biblical reasons. So again, both of these guys live in a fucking bubble, and they're like, I don't know, in my bubble, everybody agrees with me.
Israel for 50.
When I have people on my show, they always suck up to me because it's my fucking show.
3 years, since 1973. I've been here over 100 times before I became ambassador. And as ambassador, I've lived here for a year. So if I was a Christian living in Israel, I think I would know if it was really, really uncomfortable.
No, you wouldn't, because you're the ambassador for the United States. If anything, if it was happening, they would have they'd have a bubble formed around you just to protect you from that idea, just so they wouldn't have bad press or lose a necessary ally, right? Also, are we supposed to believe that Mike Huckabee goes fucking shopping at the local market for whatever sundries he needs? Get the fuck out of here.
I go to church every...
Yeah, he's the he's the ambassador, so he lives there in the embassy.
Sunday, I play
or embassy ground.
the bass guitar in my church band. I do not find that I'm somehow
When you're surrounded by Christians and a Christian thing, all right.
having to sneak around and go to an underground church.
Yeah, that's not the same thing. What he's saying is that there are people who try to like. I don't mind. I let them let them straw man each other. Fuck it.
There are hundreds of churches all over Israel of every denomination and stripe.
Yes, they are effectively tourist centers. They are an endless supply of funds from both the United States and Europe for Christians who want to come back and have Christmas there and see where Jesus walked and all that kind of stuff. And it is a huge aspect of the economy.
There's 34,000 Christians in 1948 when the Jewish state was created. Mm-hmm. There are now 184,000 Christians.
Damn. It must be Catholic.
That's hardly a sign of shrinkage. But if you look at all of the...
I don't know. Would they have expanded to 500,000 if not for that thing? And again, what's the standard? What's the other growth point of the other people there? I hate this. I hate these people. People are so stupid.
Other countries in the region, Christianity has dramatically declined. And just across into the Palestinian Authority that he recently talked about what a wonderful place it was for Christians of Palestinian thought. And he said that the Christians there
Palestinians with Christian thought, I think, but whatever.
Treated poorly. I was going to say to him, Tucker, like in Bethlehem, which he mentioned, there are no Jews in Bethlehem, like none. When I started going to Bethlehem, it was 80% Christian, 15% Muslim, and 5% something else. Today, it is over 80% Muslim, very few Christians. And some of those Christians in Bethlehem, because I know them, are actually, I don't know if he would find this disturbing, they are Christian Zionists as well. And that
Yeah, he probably would.
might really blow his mind.
Presumes facts, not an evidence that he actually has a mind. Anyways, so I just wanted to share with you that kind of fight between these guys because it popped off in the last couple of days, and it's on the one hand, it eats a lot of the sort of right wing media bandwidth, so as to avoid all the Epstein stuff around Trump.